Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me His Honor Yusuf Ziya Irbec.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will speak today on the international communication and cultural diplomacy for the harmonization of energy policies in the Middle East and Central Asia with the global economic interdependence. Why I chose such topic? In developing the intercommunication and cultural diplomacy among countries for the harmonization of the energy policies in the Middle East and the Central Asia, and all these different energy policies and cooperation schemes of the leading countries should be taken into consideration for a healthy harmonization of the strategies. Cultural diplomacy and intercommunication between the countries are harmed in a very heavy way if there is no consensus for the use of the energy resources worldwide, because cost of conflict is always very high, especially in the Middle East, in the Central Asia, and in the area where the energy resources are supplied. Energy diplomacy. What is the energy diplomacy? Energy diplomacy goals have far more complex nature than the traditional diplomacy goals because world population is growing very fast. Higher energy needs is the result. The scenarios for future have special meanings for the energy diplomacy as it is due to its nature of long-term sustainable objectives. In this regard, decision makers of energy diplomacy should be in close relationships with the scientific community and think tanks for the future generating scenarios. Energy policies, the short-term success or failure may be in question for the traditional diplomacy, but however, energy diplomacy is a more solid continuing process, and during this process, it is important to assess how well the foreign policy goals have been achieved or how much they deviated from these goals. The dynamics of the energy market are very important. The dynamics of energy markets are increasingly determined by countries outside of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Non-OECD countries account for 90% of population growth nowadays, 70% of the increase in economic output, and 90% of energy demand growth over the period from 2010 to 2035. China and energy consumption is being a very important case. China consolidates its position as the world's largest energy consumer. In 2035, China will consume nearly 70% more energy than the United States. The second largest consumer, even though by then per capita energy consumption in China is still less than half the level in the United States. 2 billion people are living or live in China and India. With the economic growth, their energy consumption is certainly going to be higher, and all these developments should be taken into consideration for the future reshaping process of the new diplomacy or cultural diplomacy. Another energy resource is coming into play now, natural gas and renewable energy. The most preferred investment energy sources would be the natural gas and renewable energy sources in the next 25 years. the demand for petroleum would be less than natural gas, and the increase in demand would be from the transport sector and new emerging countries. The sustainability of energy resources is now a global issue, already became a global issue, and shale gas has rightfully earned its place in the energy world as nations use up energy commodities very fast. The giants in the shale gas industry are China, United States, Argentina, Mexico, South Africa, and Australia. And you see here the figures, but I don't go in details because of the time limit. Growth in primary energy demand, you see from 2010, from now on until 2035, especially energy demand for China, India, Russia, Middle East, the rest of the world. This is especially two determinants, the energy consumption of China and India because of 2 billion population. Projections in net imports of oil, if you see China, the third column, the China will increase very fast the net imports of oil, and in the second place, India, European Union, almost in the same level, United States, because of the shale gas, it is possible to decrease the energy import demand. And energy policy, Turkey is in the heart of all of these energy resources. 70% of the energy resources of the world are coming from the neighboring countries or from the neighboring borders of Turkey. Therefore, Turkish cultural diplomacy and Turkish traditional diplomacy is very important. Azerbaijan seeks, for example, Turkish support against Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Israel and Saudi Arabia are in need of Turkish support against Iran, and Iran wants Turkish support when dealing with the US. Kosovo is also demanding Turkish support against Serbia. Russia is also looking for Ankara's support for the continuation of commitments of Muslim Turks within the Federation to Moscow. All these states require something from Turkey. US wants Turkey to continue to be an American ally as before. However, the truth is that Turkey is now becoming more regional power, working in a certain balance, fastening. On the other side, according to the US, President Barack Obama is stating that Asia-Pacific region will play a key role in determining the future of the world. As you see, the energy demand of China and India. In this regard, the US tightened the alliance with Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines, declared as a non-members of NATO allies, and Singapore signed a large-scale strategic cooperation agreement with the United States. China, Japan, and India are the other three powerful countries. The peaceful cooperation is only possible with the peaceful use of energy resources by decreasing the cost of conflict in this area. You don't see energy, just a moment, you don't see the energy. I will explain you here by my by looking at my presentation. Energy security is here, and energy policy is depending on the energy security plus economics and environment. Without considering the environment and economics and energy security, it is impossible to introduce an energy policy. You don't see here, it does matter. In any way, okay, you see now. Okay, you see now. Oh, pardon, excuse me. Energy security, economics, environment, energy policy. All of these factors should be taken into consideration. Economic crisis worldwide are determining in any way the energy policies and the cultural diplomacy too. We have witnessed a series of major financial and economic crises in the last couple of decades that affected developing and developed countries. How many minutes I have now? Okay, I'm going. A downturn in economic activity leading to the 2008 and 2012 global recession and contributing to the European sovereign debt crisis led by Greece, Ireland, and Portugal, Spain, and Italy. And these are the financial crises we have witnessed in the world. And many of us would remember the 2010 eruption of volcano case in Iceland. This was an environmental disaster, energy policy without taking environmental aspect into consideration. It is impossible, and therefore an environmental disaster in Japan once again is another example. Middle East and energy supply, why it is important, world's most important source of energy is coming from the Middle East. Key to the stability of global economy is the Middle East picture, open to threats and highly sensitive to challenges, conflicts of strategic interest, and complementary interests. Political crisis in the Middle East, many minor and major protests in the wake of the Arab Spring have resulted in governmental changes in the Middle East, sustained civil uprisings, revolution, and civil wars in the Arab world and in the Middle East that began in December 2010. You see here in Algeria and in Libya, in Egypt, in Iraq, and there were some cases in Saudi Arabia and Mauritania and so on. And these crises affect automatically the energy policy, at the same time increasing the cost of conflict, avoiding the coexistence possibilities. Middle East, while it is important, because global oil shock points are here. Suez Canal, Bab el-Mandab, and in Iran, Strait of Hormuz, and there are other states, but the most important states are in the Middle East. Therefore, it is very important. World oil consumption is, you see, all the developing countries, United States of America, EU, China, they are the first three countries. Crude oil, while is the conflict of Iran so important for us, many countries are importing too much oil from Iran. Iran is a very important partner for the oil consumption. As you see, 1,000 billion per day. China, Japan, India, South Korea, Italy, Turkey, all of them are importing, and therefore it is very important now, the crisis in Syria and connected with the Iran case. OPEC share of world crude oil reserves is very big, as you see, and all the OPEC countries, if there is a problem, a crisis in the OPEC area, then you cannot get rid of this crisis worldwide.
Doctor, you still have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Very fast. EU 27 gas imports by country origin. As you see, EU 27 are mostly dependent on the Russia, 35%, and secondly, Norway, but Russian energy policy will directly affect the EU policies. EU imports of crude oil, let's go very fast. Dependency, you see, we don't expect big changes in the future. Energy import dependency, you see in, okay, Black Sea and Caspian region, as you see here, the Turkish case. Turkey is an important transport route for all the energy resources between Russian Federation, Middle East, and European Union. And the second Black Sea and Caspian region oil pipelines, many pipelines are going now. Some of them are under operation, some others under negotiations, and therefore the Syrian crisis, the position of Turkey, and the position of Iran is very important for the future cooperation in the region. And this is another map. We should be weather transform. We should weather transform, or we will be transformed. I like this history very much. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. It knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle, or it will starve to death. Every morning, a gazelle wakes up, and it knows it must run faster than the fastest lion, or it will be killed. It doesn't matter whether you are a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. It doesn't matter you are a developing country or developed country. You should be better off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Yusuf from Turkey, please, ladies and gentlemen, join me with a round of applause. Okay. And we can still take one question from the audience.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about our energy policy. And actually, we have a very long relationship with Russia. And we observed that we have very good relation with Russia in the last decade with the AK Party government. And we built our policy based on, I'm sorry, I'm from Turkey. I forget to say. I'm Can from Ankara, Hacettepe University. And I believe that this policy can be breakable in maybe 50 years later, because we don't know what we will do in 50 years later. So how we transform the energy policy to cultural relations, because we need cultural diplomacy with Russia should be sustainable. I'm sorry, I'm so excited.
Okay.
So what's your policy to construct cultural relations with Russia?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I was elected by the first term. Now I'm in the second term of my political career, and I am serving also in the Parliamentarians for Global Action. I'm very active to realize this arms trade treaty in the United Nations, and also to let ratify this ICC, ratified already by 121 countries. But in the second term, I was in some misagreements with the Erdogan, and then I changed my party. But I was once again able to be re-elected. Now I'm in the opposition. But in the foreign policy, opposition and the governments are trying to find out a consensus or a compromise. Turkey is a candidate for the membership of the European Union. But the Russian Federation, in the Russian Federation, there are many Muslims who are also speaking Turkish, using the Turkish language. And Putin is also very much interested in having the Turkish help or the cooperational approach in order to improve the relations of the Russian Federation with the Central Asian republics and to solve the conflicts in the Caucasus and so on. But it is not easy to solve the conflicts at once, but we are trying. The cultural diplomacy in that point is very important because there is a big cultural diversity in the Russian Federation. And Turkey could contribute too much in the Russian Federation, also in Europe. Now we are in Berlin. In Berlin, there is a big district of the Turkish population, for example. More than 4 million Turks are living now here, and cultural diplomacy is a must, unavoidable for the Turkish foreign policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf, for your participation and contribution. Thank you.